tools, which is some of the things you're talking about.
And now, you mentioned Dead Space, and I'm now trying to enumerate in my mind just all of the companies that have died to EA.
Well, okay, so
EA's
defense,
consumed.
Two things. One is Visceral was always an
I think died was the right word.
That's right.
But there's two sides of the story here. One is, yes, they bought the companies, and yes, they killed the brands, but those companies were all bankrupt. Origin was bankrupt. Bullfrog was bankrupt. They were going to die if EA didn't step in and keep them alive in some form for a few more years.
What about a company that did the Sims?
That's Maxis. They're still around. Yeah. I've got a good friend who's working on Sims 4 right now.
Yeah, but they shut something down in regards to Maxis. They shut down
Steve House.
The studio.
He was at Visceral with me, and then he switched over to Maxis.
I don't think I know.
Yes. So EA Redwood Shores bought out EA Redwood Shores and Maxis on Walnut Creek merged into EA Redwood Shores.
But they shut down something in regards to Maxis.
Yeah, they shut down the team that did SimCity. Right? You remember the big SimCity catastrophe? Yeah.
Sure.
So they're gone.
Well, but to be honest, I mean, everybody in the games industry, you know, people talk about layoffs and about this, but everybody in the games industry, at least all the senior significant people, seem to find niches out there. If John Smedley can find a new job, then anybody can.
Tim, what's John Smedley?
I don't know who John is.
Oh, so he was head of Sony Online. And he now runs the San Diego studio. That's the first one that Amazon Game Studios.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of people that are buying places up. So.
The only job protection with job security is a good resume.
There we are.
Is it pulling the microphone from the Logitech or from the?
Do you normally record these, or is this something?
What's that?
Is it pulling the microphone from the Logitech or?
I think it's from this guy, but we can make sure in a sec.
Okay.
So a couple of months ago, we had an outside.
Did you do setup like this, recording as a profession at some point?
It's a hobby.
It's a hobby?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, when I was younger, I used to be really into it. My dad was a computer repair guy.
Okay.
And so I had like endless things to play with.
Nice.
And
that's fun.
one of the things that he used to do when he was younger was traditional videograph, like with a whole big old camera and stuff.
Okay.
I still remember he had this huge over-the-shoulder, put it on a VHS while he was recording camera.
Okay.
And as a kid, he taught me how to do it with the newer high-tech stuff.
Yeah.
And then I just kept doing it as an adult.
Nice.
So
let's take a look.
That's why I never started. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life because I'm a habitual person, so I just know that.
You know, it might be coming from the computer. Let's.
cool.
1, 2. All right.
Oh
good.
yeah, that's done.
And it actually sounded pretty good when we saw the live stream.
Yeah, I mean, and next time if we want to try it out, I will bring out a mic. We'll set it up.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't have any of that at home, sadly.
No, I got it.
9 years old.
I don't have a Yeti anymore. I have a Siren from Razer.
My father was like,
Oh, cool.
Really?
Here's the story
terrified
of
about blowing up the house.
Last Friday,
here's the story of the longest times without tobacco is when he goes to bed and when he wakes up.
my brother got discharged today.
What I'm talking about is Arbor.
But it's stress, like,
It makes me feel like
chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors to and apparently that job had him just chain smoking all day, drinking 2 to 5 pots of coffee a day.
So do you know how many views we got last time around?
So I think it was about 5 to 10. So there seemed to be a handful.
We didn't promote it.
No.
We're using our
Unless the other person really wants to.
channel, our.
I don't think Steven's fellows here yet.
Yeah, it's listed on our Meetup page.
Well, we're all hooked
So,
up.
All right.
No, we
because I
haven't-
can-
we
I can
haven't
help
emphasized
promote
it.
this.
okay,
Yeah. Okay.
it's just usually right there.
So the answer to your question was we kind of did silent last month. We got like 5 to 10 views on that. We didn't promote it anywhere. But when this goes up, I'll give Skittles the link tomorrow.
Maybe Larry.
Only if there's anything embarrassing.
That's right. What are the odds when they're talking? He won't say anything embarrassing. He's professional. He'll be me. We all know. Yeah. So you're going first.
I very carefully crafted my slides. Last time. The anecdote there can't be said. Cut that one out. Can't say that. Cut that out.
We launched Window Blinds 3 at Microsoft.
Because I was going to ask people for if other providers
Good to see you.
You'll notice we are not shocked.
It's got to be good. It says beta on it.
So if you could
my first
video,
absolutely
great.
My first birthday at Stardock, and it was just like we ended up showing it at I'm trying to remember which. I mean, just an enormous show down there. We were in Joe Louis Arena. Kim and I did the demo. And no crashes, no black screens, or any of that stuff. But at the same time that we launched it, I did my
Totally ran out of money.
I recorded it on PowerPoint.
Only I could get a really nice camera.
Because PowerPoint never crashes, and if it does, it's not my fault.
And he goes, I did this intentionally, guys. I lost all my money intentionally for the arc.
And that started my big comeback.
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy. Rails are not going to stay.
I missed the beginning of the story, Austin, but that's a hell of a punchline.
I try. You're not going to ever explain it. We're just going to leave it at this.
She's perfect.
That's fine then.
Brandon, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
See you in the MLC stuff.
Oh.
That's almost as bad as Ohio State stuff.
Hey.
Not quite.
Yeah, the place I worked on a lot of college.
See, I'm okay when I wear my original. First of all, I went to Detroit Mercy for my MBA, but my bachelor's is at NYU. We have no sports teams. We don't believe in sports. You know, if Illinois has the Fighting Illini, we have the bickering CPAs.
Does anything go on between Columbia and NYU?
No, but ironically, Columbia had the longest losing streak in college football ever. I mean, just losing streak, and they almost won a game, but they managed to pull it out. And the Daily News back headline was, Columbia comes from behind to maintain streak. I'm sorry, Columbia comes from ahead to maintain streak. It's just back page headline.
Fortunately, I don't know if Corbett told you that I missed this notification.
Hey, so have we heard from Mars?
When do you try
He should be here. He said he was. He's probably running late. 696 has.
So let's come up. No big deal. Just get a nice time.
Right here we got 4 actually. Plenty of times they ask me to love.
You're not nervous about this, are you?
Not consciously, but my body does.
Really?
Yeah.
It's just
So was it
a room more friendly people.
There's a Unity search. There's a Unity search.
You've talked to more people in this space than in the start.
Oh, yeah.
Part of their start control meeting probably
There's
is
a lot of
Folks
them.
will be like, oh, yeah, boys.
That'll They'll be
Do that to click directly on the
I had when I was at GameScom, I had to get up on Microsoft's page and talk
in
to
particular about what answer you
audience,
I noticed several
people,
Well,
and I realized at the last minute that this talk that I had very carefully constructed for the past
No, I'm so proud.
would completely go over the heads of all of the German speakers in the audience. They did not get some details of what I was talking about. So I realized I had to chuck my my talk as I walked down on stage and had to do something you want to. Yeah, right. That was all stressful.
No, I'll click slowly click it twice. Yeah. Although you technically could just regularly
Hey guys, I didn't show someone believe in success. I want you to really feel that game in your heart. That's the only way to
So like, part of me is like, why never ask the question? Like, it's something they got to figure out.
Who said he might be able to make it 2 miles over here?
Yeah. I feel like it was mostly designed just so they could sell that.
This was put here strategically to trip us up.
Probably, you have to kind of gauge the value of the.
Hey, how goes? Pretty good.
We were all good. The projectors, we tested everything.
Yep. It worked an hour ago. Presumably it will work in a couple minutes. I really impressed with the keystone kind of stuff. That it's at that much of an angle and it actually looks square.
I don't think. Yeah. We've been running this for about a year now.
I didn't know that was a tag. Potentially also that doesn't have resistance.
Sure. Maybe we just weren't advertising that. Did you already get the extra budget? Alright.
I have a blank whiteboard and it's filling me with me to write something on a cover.
Right, good graphics and point to it.
That's the demo here.
Also, be sure to read all the words that are on the screen. In my clues.
We learn something new every day, such as how to handle a very squeaky chair.
Well, I think we should get started. But one thing I got to ask all of you to do when Mars gets here. We need to, okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't. But when Mars gets here, we all need to point and mock at him, you know. So, okay, before we get started, come on in. Have a seat. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Guys get pizza, drinks out there?
I'm all right, thank you. Thank you.
So, a little bit of community business.
Yeah.
So just a couple of quick announcements, and then we'll get started with the main part of this. Number one, we've been contacted by IGDA Central, and we have been asked to inform everybody that IGDA as an organization is looking for compliance with certain non-harassment standards. I mean, it's one of those things that I almost feel awkward saying that we should be like, guys, in case you had different expectations, we're not allowed to assault anyone on these premises. It's an insurance issue, I know. It's just one of those funny things, but this is I guess the nature of the world that we're in, that we need to make this announcement. We want this to be an inclusive place. We want people to be comfortable to come here. We want people to be comfortable to say anything and to be able to present their ideas. So that's part of what we're going to be doing. You're not aware of it, and we'll bring Mars in also, but we're going to have to review some of the templates and adapt them for IGDA and Arbor. Nothing that will be onerous, but it's an obligatory announcement. Other thing I want to say about community stuff, Spellbound, that has presented here, that's a friend of ours, is running a Kickstarter. I guess I was lucky enough that that I was one of the early ones to back their project. I also reached out today to the head of games over at Kickstarter, and he's going to do what he can to try to promote that project. So it's a really cool thing. Because of family issues, I have spent a lot of time over the past week in hospitals, and it sucks to be in a hospital. It sucks even worse if you're a kid, and Spellbound is trying to make that experience a little bit better. So it's something certainly worth supporting. So we're going to have 3 presenters tonight. Our first 2 are our friends from Stardock, Nathan and Derek. Stardock is a company in Michigan that makes certain kind of games. It's kind of an old one. And T-shirts. They make T-shirts. And Stardock has a couple of roles. First of all, largest game company in this area. Very successful one. And more than that, they've also been a training ground, a proving ground for a lot of the people in game development in this area. We've had a whole bunch of speakers that have had connections with Stardock. And so without further ado, you guys are up.
Thanks.
Sure, nobody needs the pizza first.
Nathan, I may need you to turn this on. See, I've already labeled us. I'm the dumb guy. He's the smart guy. So he's going to do the smart guy thing. Before we get started, I'd like to know, just so I can help tailor the presentation, what brought you here today, what you're looking for, where you are in relation to the industry. Are you looking to get a job in the industry? Are you working in the industry now and just are meeting with peers and seeing what else is out there? Are you looking to get a game published? You know, what is it that you're looking for today, so we can help maybe tailor it a little bit towards you. So, can we go in the room, maybe?
Sure, I have to be here because I'm Joe, the director of Spark East. So welcome here to everyone. Obviously, fully in support of what we're trying to accomplish here, and it's really great that we continually have a great group of folks coming every month. Keep coming. Keep eating the pizza too, by the way.
We certainly appreciate you hosting us. It's a beautiful place to come in and speak.
My name is Andrew, and I'm an indie developer. And I'm trying to look at how we're going to be expanding our business next year. I'm looking particularly towards like how publishing goes through, like how that works out.
Talk about that.
I'm Ben Oaken, and I'm unemployed.
You're what?
Unemployed.
Okay, are you looking to work in the gaming industry or?
Game industry or software development.
Yeah, all right.
My name's Brandon. I am currently a student at Eastern University. I come here because I want to get a better understanding of the possible opportunities around me when I get out of school or during, just so I can know what's going on around me.
I'm Corbin. I'm also over at EMU, and I'm a student there as well, and looking to get into the industry after I finish off and make connections while I'm here.
Okay.
I'm Carissa. I'm a game software major at Lawrence Tech, and obviously looking for employment at some point in time, as well as learning about the industry, that sort of thing.
All right, how many people here are students that are looking to potentially work in the industry at some point? All right, a lot of those. How many people here are currently working in the industry and worried about, or want to talk to peers or looking to publish a game? All right, people that didn't raise their hands either time. What are you? All right, back there.
I'm actually a personal trainer.
Okay.
But pretty much everything I do in my free time involves some kind of tech. So I just like this kind of stuff. Like I go to PAX, I stream, all that kind of stuff. So I just enjoy it.
Okay.
I'm just a hobbyist game developer, and thought it'd be fun to come and check out the scene and meet some people.
All right. I'm Derek Paxton. I'm the vice president of Stardock. I run the game side of Stardock. Stardock kind of has two different parts. Nathan is a lead developer at Stardock. So again, dumb guy, smart guy. Today we're going to talk about kind of what the industry is going through from our perspective, and hopefully it'll be useful to you too, kind of give you the kind of view of the world as we're seeing it. That's awesome.
We did it.
Oh. All right, so who is Stardock? Larry gave us a great intro. We've been making games for over 20 years now, which means we've seen a lot of change in the industry. We have about 35 employees. Larry was very kind to say that we're the largest developer around here. We really don't think of ourselves as that. We think of ourselves as the little guy because we're constantly being compared to larger companies there. So in our mind, we're a very indie developer of 30 or so very talented people that are working together and making lots of great products. You may be familiar with some of our games that are up there. We specialize in mid-market, which just means that we try to find games that we can make that are good quality without spending $10 million, $20 million, $30 million budget to produce them. So we can't make a Grand Theft Auto type game. We can't make that game. It just isn't going to work on the kind of budgets that we work with. But we believe if you have a reasonable budget and you have an audience that knows who you are, that you can count on, then you can make games for a reasonable budget, which for us is somewhere around $3 million. That allows us to hit all the quality goals we want and still be very profitable at the end of the day. We don't have any hire and fire policy, so a lot of companies will staff up for a project, hire a bunch of people, and then lay them all off as they get close to the end of the project. I wish I could say that was because we are super nice guys, although he's a super nice guy. But it's really because we're here in Michigan, and it's hard to find super talented people that we work with, and we want people to stay with us forever. We've been here for 20 years, and we have some people that have been at the company for almost that long, so for a long time. So if we get somebody in who is productive and does great work, the last thing in the world we want them to do is go anywhere else. So for us, it's like in LA or in some of the larger cities where they have a lot of industry, people can kind of bounce back and forth between different companies. For us, that doesn't happen. If somebody leaves Stardock, a lot of times they move. And trying to get a developer or an artist to come work for us who has a lot of industry experience, I have to lie to them. I told him it never snows here to get him to move here.
Only sunny 70 degrees.
That's right. I'm sure you've gotten that line from Brad too. So trying to get people to move here is a big challenge. So the last thing we want them to ever do is leave. So we don't hire and fire for projects, and we don't crunch. Not crunching. Typically, whenever I interview anybody, they always say, "Oh, that's good," and then it takes about a couple weeks of them working here before they come back and they go, "I thought you were lying to me." No, we don't. Crunch time in the industry, in my opinion, before I came to Stardock, I was a project manager working in business software with a lot of very large customers, so my background is project management. So when I came to the gaming industry, I was a little horrified at kind of what's happening on the project management side. So in my opinion, crunch time happens because projects aren't managed very well. So on one hand, they're over-promising stuff and not doing it at the time, and they're scoping it correctly. And the other one is that there is a tension between publishers and developers, where publishers are pushing for more features in the game. We want you to do A, B, and C, but you can't move your release date. Developer accepts that. Sometimes they have no choice but to accept it. So they say, yes, we'll have all that done, and then they go back to their teams and say, we're working 80 hours a week for the next 2 months to try to meet these demands. Again, as I mentioned, we don't want anybody to leave, so we try to avoid all of this. It's helpful that we publish all of our own games, so when we do have arguments between publishers and developers, it's all in our head, which is good for us and bad for our wives that have to listen to us ramble. We aren't on store shelves, so in the old days, Larry had to fight these battles when he was at Stardock. You used to have to sign a contract with the Walmarts and Best Buys of the world and say that on October 17th, that game was going to be on that store shelf. And if you missed that date, there were large penalties. And you know more about this than I do. So you had to hit that day. And that caused, when it gets close to release time, Stardock has always believed that you need to give the game a little bit more time rather than more money. It tends to make for a better quality game. So if we need to push it another couple months, we can. I talked a little bit in the last slide about 35 people in the company. Most gaming companies would have 35 people working on one game together. Stardock, we don't. We have a lot of games in development at one time. So we like our team sizes typically around 8 to 10 people. And what 8 to 10 people means is if I need to give the game another 3 months because it's just not ready to go yet, we can do that. It's not a huge deal. If I have 35 people working on a game and I need to give it another 3 months, then it's a much different kind of conversation that I need to have with our president. Also, having the smaller teams is nice because if I have 4 games in development and I have an animator that's all done with all of his work on game 1, there's nothing left for him to do, there are 3 other teams that are usually like, we would love to get him. So can you come over and work? Or other game studios that have everybody working on one project, if they have an animator that's all done, they can't afford to just let them sit idle for a year, and they have to go into the hire and fire. They have to lay them off and then try to bring them back later. So I like the small teams because it allows us to juggle resources like that a lot better. And Stardock does have 20 years of back catalog sales, which means that we have money coming in every day. So put a good game out there and it will make money for a long time, and then we can have that revenue coming in and we don't have to worry so much about, listen, if this game isn't great, if it doesn't do blockbuster numbers, or if it doesn't release exactly when it should, then we're going to go out of business for it.
So the first game that I sold for Stardock was Corporate Machine in 2001. If you go to Steam today, you can still buy the Corporate Machine.
Yep, still making money even today. Yeah, we like those back catalog sales. It is nice to have them out there, have some revenue that's coming in. Even if the game isn't necessarily profitable when we first put it out, that long tail makes a big difference for us. We had a game that was put out in 2010, which was Elemental War Magic, and it wasn't a good game. Brad's the owner of Stardock, and he actually got up at GDC with a panel full of developers that were talking about gaming failures, and all of them were talking about projects that they had spent a lot of their time and effort on, and the game wasn't any good, so they canceled it in the late stages. And they talked about what they learned from that process and how tough it was to go through it, and how they would avoid getting that far into a project before having it canceled in the future. And Brad got up and said, unlike the rest of these guys, we shipped our game. So we shipped a bad game in 2010. Brad went out to the community and said right away, there's two things that he's going to do to fix it. One was anybody that bought that game gets the next 2 games in that series for free. So he wanted to stand behind it and make sure if you ever buy a Stardock game, you never regret that purchase. He said that it didn't hit our quality bar that we had, so we want to make sure that we make it right with every customer. And the second thing he did was he went out and hired some people to try to bring new blood in and try to make sure that those kind of issues don't happen again. I was fortunate enough to be one of the people that was hired as part of that process. For me, seeing a company CEO that was willing to stand behind his products like that and say, hey, yeah, I know the smart thing to do here is to pretend like this game never happened. Every company releases bad games, and you kind of push them to the side, and you say, don't worry about this. Let's talk about Galactic Civilizations III over here. Brad didn't do that. He wanted to make it right. He wanted to make sure, as I said, you never regret a Stardock purchase. So that's why I came here. Fortunately, not having the financial pressure allows him to do things like that. As I mentioned, we see ourselves as an indie studio. So when we look out at the market, we see these much bigger games being made. And if you are an indie developer, you probably are wondering, how am I going to compete with these companies that have, they're putting $100 million into the game, or even a Stardock that's just putting $3 million in and compete with your titles. And our mentality is always that the additional cost of the game is a burden as much as it is an advantage. So if you are making a game for $180 million, you have to sell a lot of units, 3 million units to become profitable on that. Stardock, when we make a game for $3 million, we have to sell about 120,000 units to be profitable. 120,000 units isn't a ton when you're on all the major platforms, when you have a mailing list of 6 million people on it, and you're on Steam, and you're going to get promotion on Steam promotion, so it's reasonable to
You
do.
get a 20-year tail on the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, whenever you see these big budget games, remember that budget is also a curse. Every dollar they put in, they have to make up somewhere. That needs to translate the sales. So for you as an indie developer, if you're spending $120,000 to make your game, then you only have to make X amount of copies or X amount of sales. For Stardock, that means that we can make niche-ier games than the other companies can. We don't have to appeal to everybody. We can look out at our audience and say, hey, listen, there's a market that isn't being served. We're not the biggest market. We don't think everybody in the world is going to like Galactic Civilizations. It's a pretty hardcore strategy game. But we think that there is an audience out there that wants a hardcore strategy game that may think that they love Civilization, and they think Civilization is great, but now maybe they want something that's a little different and a little bit more niche-y than Civilization is. And that's the audience that we serve. As an indie developer, yeah, you don't need to compete with Stardew Valley, and you don't need to compete with Grand Theft Auto. You don't need their sales. If you spend $120,000 on a game, you just need to make $121,000, and it's a good day. As I said, games have to sell 5 million units to build a wide audience. We don't. We can be niche. We can grow small. This was actually a lot more powerful of a point about 2 years ago when Unity was just starting to become popular and Steam hadn't opened the floodgates entirely. And it really was this world where you can make a game with Unity for a reasonable budget, small team, 1 person, 3 people, something like that, and put it out there. And it was fairly easy to get enough sales to cover those costs. Nowadays, with all the games coming out of Steam, it's getting harder, and the challenge isn't making a game that people will pay for. The challenge is, how do I get them to know about my game? How do I get the eyeballs? And we'll talk about that here in a minute, too. As I said, made profitable with a fraction of sales. We rely on community support. We talked about the eyeballs. There is virtually an unlimited amount of players. From our perspective, there's an unlimited amount of players out there. Every day on Steam with its 160 some of you probably know the number better than I, 110 million, 100 and something million. Lots of players out there. Effectively, it is a new audience every day. We cannot saturate that market. Stardock just doesn't have the marketing clout to be able to get out to all of them. So whenever we put Sins of the Solar Empire, the joke at Stardock is whenever we put Sins of the Solar Empire on sale and it gets promoted by Valve and it gets into some feature, we make the same amount of money. It came out in 2012. If we put it on sale this weekend, it makes the same amount of money. And it's because the audience is new. Effectively, the audience is new. We're not filling the bucket, so to speak. Those players that see it, we're going to see about 20 million people are going to see and get an impression. They're going to see that game being advertised. 20 million people, of which 99% of them have never heard of Stardock, even though we've been on there for years, even though the game's been promoted 15, 20 times. That's the first time they've ever seen that game. They will click on it. A percentage of them will click on it. About 3% will click. And about of those ones that go to the store page now and see the advertisement, about 3% will buy. And that happens every time. And if the game went through the same process 2 months ago, then it's the same as it was 2 months ago. So from your perspective selling games, the audience is unending. It is a bucket that you can never fill. So as much as you talk to them, the better, because they're never hearing you twice. That changes a little bit when you're talking to game reviewers, when you're talking to journalists. They have a very finite attention span. So when you talk to them, you have to be very careful to make sure you engage them at exactly the right moment when you're ready to show. If they're going to talk about your game, if you're going to write an article, be very careful about, okay, this is the moment. This is when I want to ring that bell. But for community talking to the community, promoting the community, yeah, every day, all day. So one of the things we like to say at Stardock, admission is good, scope is dangerous, which means 3 million, some days, seems like a lot of money to make a game. It goes very quick. We like games that do different things. We like to take chances because we have to differentiate from other ones. We'll talk a little bit about differentiation in a minute. But scope is the killer for us. Whenever we get into a situation where we think, this game isn't working, but you know what would make it better? If we had 3 more factions, or 12 more ships, or anything that equates to just making it bigger in order to respond to a problem is a really dangerous area for us. Because then you look at, we spent another $500,000 now in this game, and it's still not very good. It's not fixing the problem. So we always try to keep scope under wraps, but we want to do something different. We want to try something unusual and new. Everything so far making sense? Does anybody have any questions? I know I speak at about 1 million miles a minute. Can you guys in the back hear me okay? All right.
I have a question.
Sure.
So you mentioned that when you go to PR, that you have to time things when you market. But for community, so as soon as you start with a new concept, you can just start leaking ideas of the game already, bits of the game, or are you trying to time the marketing with your community as well?
Our CEO, exactly, this is why you were chuckling, wasn't it? Our CEO will post on our public forums that we are doing something based on a conversation that we had in the hallway. It's like, it would be kind of cool if we do this. And then I'll get a ping later. Hey, you should really see this forum post that's out there. To answer your question, seriously, yeah, as much as you include the community, we really don't see a problem with that. Some publishers are really tight around it. They want to make sure that all the information comes out at once because they want to build that funnel and they want to control it. Stardock,
that's less so than it used to be.
Yeah.
So I just had a conversation with a publisher, and one of the things that they asked us as part of our original conversation was how often we do Kickstarter updates. So okay, so you did a Kickstarter project, raised all this money, that's great. How often do you update your community? What's the community like? Do you have a Discord server? Yeah. So.
Yeah, you really can't do it too much. Yeah, the community wants to be involved and engaged in your project. Something Stardock's always done very well. Brad, a lot of the reason why Brad makes games, makes games because he likes talking to the community about games. So that's why he's out there talking all the time. But the community enjoys it. Even before there was early access, Stardock had beta programs that people were in and playing the games and giving feedback to us about what they liked and what they don't like. It was actually kind of a problem for Stardock when Valve made early access popular. Because we've been doing beta programs forever, from well before I was at Stardock. But when early access came, suddenly now a much larger community started getting early access builds of our games. And that community had very different expectation of what should be in an early access game. And they had the power to review the game while it was in beta. And so our games, when we did it, it was never about being fun. Oh, we know the game's horrible right now. That's the point. Play it and tell us what you like, what you don't like. We want feedback. We want you in playing. So we get negative reviews. The negative reviews stick with the game, so we had to be a lot more careful about it. But we like as much community involvement as we can. We've had to kind of adjust a little bit, be more careful because of Steam's policy. One of our big, oh, these are such beautiful pictures. All super pixelated now. You have to trust me, this looks amazing.
It's a 5K picture right there.
One of our challenges is differentiating from the rest of the market that's out there. One of the challenges that you'll have in making games. If you are a Unity developer, there's lots of Unity developers, so what are you bringing to the table? Are you a better game designer than all of those other? Do you have an interesting idea that's so unique amongst any of those others that'll get picked up? Or how do you rise above the noise of all of the voices in the audience? And for Stardock, I'm a designer at Stardock, so we knew it wasn't going to be a good game design. We were done there. What we wanted to do is we wanted to make large-scale strategy games. And there wasn't an engine out there that did that for us. Unity, Unreal, some of these other engines, they're really about making, from our perspective, a relatively small environment in beautiful detail. And strategy games have a different technical requirement than most games because the entire world that you're generating, the entire planet, the entire universe, depending on the game, has to be in memory all at the same time. And it's because when I'm playing Skyrim, the game loads up a little bubble around your player. And it's a bubble in beautiful detail. So if there's a dragon that you're looking at, you know, that texture on the side of the dragon, that's taking up 300 megs of video memory, but it looks gorgeous. If there's a tree over there, that's 50 meg of texture memory. There's a model there. There's animation to it because that tree's going to get up and attack me in a minute. But it can invest all of your available memory and processor just to that little bubble around you. And if you decide I'm going to quick travel from where I am to a city on the other side of the world, you're going to see a loading screen while it loads up all the assets in the new place where the new bubble is going to happen. It doesn't have the whole world loaded at once. It couldn't possibly do it. But strategy games don't have that luxury because you have your mini-map. And you want to be able to click anywhere on the mini-map to see what's going on. And if you see a loading screen, when I click to look at the other side of the map to see what my second base is doing, you're going to throw your computer through a wall. So every model, every texture, every animation, every particle effect, every sound effect, everything, all has to be loaded and ready to look, ready to be displayed for the player at a moment's notice. And even more, all of those other AI players that are out there, in GLSL you can play with 100 other AI players, they're taking their turns right along with the human. Every ship is fighting, entire empires are rising up and being destroyed without the player even knowing about it. But the computer is processing all that. All those AI players are acting, all those battles are happening, all that strategy is happening in the larger world. In Skyrim, if I'm at one place, the NPCs that are in another city aren't doing a thing. There's no CPU cycles that are going to them. But in our games, they're being processed. Everything is happening. So we needed an engine specifically to do that, and that's what Nitrous is. So Nitrous was created by Oxide, a company that we helped found. Brad is the CEO of Oxide and Stardock. And it is core neutral. Every available processor you have, this engine is going to use, and it just farms out work across them evenly. It is 64-bit only, and it uses all of the new APIs. Hey, Lou! It uses all of the new APIs like Vulkan and DirectX 12. The first DirectX 12 game in the world was, anybody know? Los Ashes, the Singularity by Stardock. Is this game, this beautiful pixelated wonder here. You need DirectX 12 to see all these 500 by 300 pixels. So it uses all of this. It needed to be able to do this to be able to create the games that we wanted to be able to create. So for us, this is a differentiator. This is a piece that allows us to make games that other companies can't. There's a curse to it, though, because, yes, we can do things that other companies can't. We also have a lot of limitations that they don't. Nathan could talk to you in depth about the lack of tools and the lack of features. Unity is amazing for the tools that you have there and how quickly you can get something up and running. Lou, who just entered, is a tools developer for us, so his job is to...
so it's his fault?
Yes, his fault.
Just wanted to check on that.
If he would be still working and not here hanging out. So he has a very challenging
So
job
much for
to
that
build
no crunch time.
So he has a very challenging job of trying to build that tool support so that artists can get things into the game, so that they can see their models in engine quickly. And when we made this first game, even that didn't happen. It was a painful process to get all these things in. Still today, all of these particle effects aren't made in a beautiful particle editor where you can go in and the artist can tweak it and make it look just like he wants to. They're literally in an Excel spreadsheet, which I think is amazing, because I like Excel spreadsheets, but they say it's horrible. To go ahead and tweak all the numbers and values and projectile speeds and colors and hook up all of the attachments, and it's multiple Excel spreadsheets. So it's an advantage to have an engine like this that's in-house, but there's a big cost of it too. So we try to take advantage of all of the advantages, so to speak, and try to minimize the cost of those disadvantages and hire people like Blue who can help us fix these issues. Hardware manufacturers love us because we do use all of these processors, the high-power GPUs. So for a while, if you bought an AMD video card, expensive one, you'd get a copy of Ashes of Singularity with it. So we have bundle deals there.
And you still see on all the testing that's done whenever AMD comes out with new CPUs, GPUs, they always use AOTS as the testing.
Yeah, sometimes it gets us into a little bit of trouble when NVIDIA has a new card that they haven't released yet, and they're testing it in their lab, and they're using Ashes to test it in their lab, and Ashes automatically uploads the results to a public website.
There's a button you can press that will prevent it from uploading.
And then journalists find it and write articles, as happened to us this week.
That makes up for NVIDIA cheating when we had a back in 2003, maybe 2002, we had a tool that measured GPU standards, how quickly GPUs, instead of in-game stuff like Fraps does, this actually measured GPU efficiency on your desktop. And NVIDIA managed to reverse engineer it somehow, and so they went from values of 120 for NVIDIA and 140 for ATI then, before the book ran, to all of a sudden NVIDIA was like 120,000. Cool.
This is the changing market from our perspective. There is a problem right now in the market, which is Steam discoverability. We've been to Valve a couple times now and talked to them and shown them numbers, and I've argued with their staff. They understand that there's a problem. Both from the developer side, I need consistent eyeballs on my games. We make real games. I need real impressions. I'm not saying that other developers don't matter. I'm fine with the balanced approach. I just want to make sure that I'm getting an appropriate amount of impressions compared to some little, nothing shovelware game that was put out there that shouldn't have any. And I say that not being disparaging to anybody. I mean literal shovelware games that a developer has put up with base Unity code and public assets and put up 187 different games in 2 months just to be able to get maybe $100, $200 each game, and to be able to scan the Steam trading card system. Yeah. So getting those things off of there. Valve knows there's a problem, but right now it's a problem for developers. It's even a bigger problem for players. It used to be that when a player would go to Steam, I don't know if you guys are like this, but I'm a huge fan. I've been on Steam forever. When I would go and I would see the top sellers list, those were always games that I was interested in. On the main page, every game that I saw was something that maybe wasn't perfect for me, but it was worth 10 seconds of my time to check it out and look at it. Like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And nowadays, I see endless tiles, and they don't apply to me. And I feel like I'm kind of wading through a lot of garbage to try to find the little gold nuggets that are out there. So discoverability is a huge problem. Steam is turning into the App Store. And Stardock tried the App Store too. We put a game out there, and it immediately disappeared into all the games that are coming out. And it was a big problem for us. There will be 6,000 games released this year on Steam. And so that is tough for anybody to handle. And I put the stat up here. The average Steam game used to have 32,000 owners. It's now down to 21,000. So even though Steam will tell us, as they argued with me, Stardew Valley did great. It has great numbers. And there are exceptions. The fact is the average good game revenue is declining. So I have here, difficult to see. These are numbers.
Derek,
yeah.
I'm in the same world you are, but let me just ask the question. Is your perception that there are the same number of good games, or are there more good games? I mean, we know that the absolute number of games, we know that Steam just deleted 250 shovelware games.
Yeah.
That was a week ago. is your perception that the reason that the number of viewers is changing is solely because of the shovelware problem, or because there's more good stuff coming?
The industry has always gone through areas where there's lots of good content all coming out at once, and areas where, there's some years where you look at what's the best game of the year, and it's really hard to talk about. It's like, man, there's such good games that all came out this year. So I think that we are about average in that. There'll be maybe highs or low, but I don't think it's a problem of we have twice as many great games as we used to. I'm not buying twice as many games. I'm not interested in twice as many games at the end of the day. But it's just finding the ones that I can find is the problem. So it's a lot of quantity problems, a curation problem. The industry has been, the blue line here is impressions, which means how many eyeballs are on the games that we make. The top line here is about 202 million people saw GLSL on the Steam store in 2015, the year it released. 2015, this is almost useless. I will tell you what all these numbers are. But the year the game released, I expected to have more impressions than in preceding years. And I expect that every year the impressions are going to go down a little bit. That's normal. It's not normal to go down like this. Like this, GLSL 3 is a well-reviewed game. It has a good Metacritic score. It's certainly not for everybody, but this drop-off is more than we've ever seen in Steam history. The store hits is the red line, which just means if you have seen an impression of the game, about 3% of people will click on that link. So there's an ad. It may be, hey, it's suggested for you. It may be a main capsule. It may be a recently updated. Wherever it is, they see something Galactic Civilizations, and they click on it. That's called click-through rate. About 3% of people do it. And the next number is called store hits. How many people are you actually delivering to our store page on Steam? And that goes down equally with impressions. So it's not that people are getting to the store page and they're not buying.
Right.
They're buying at the same rate they always have. The problem of the funnel isn't that people are becoming more discerning or they're going to it and saying, not for me. The problem of the funnel is just the people that are coming into it. So we see impressions, goes click-through rate, 3%, goes down to store hits, which is also declining, and then we have what's called our conversion rate, which is, okay, you're on the Steam store page now, what percent of you click buy? And that's about 3% too. And that number's been consistent throughout the year. So everything in the funnel is the same except for the amount of people coming in. So our response to that, unsurprisingly, I know you have content too here, Nathan, so I'll try to move quick, is to quit relying on Steam. We talked about, we suggest things that they could do. My simple big fix that I pleaded with them to do is it should cost $10,000 to put a game on Steam. And that should be recoupable. When you get sales, the sales comes back to you. So if you can sell more than $10,000, it's zero cost. It's all equals out. But I don't want you putting a game on Steam if you don't believe you can at least make $10,000 on it. And that gets rid of all of these shovelware games. And they argued and said, no, that's not fair to the little guy.
Well, the other part with that is, sorry, Yolanda, Steam Spot. He and I have had discussions about this, and one of the things that he has pointed out, and that's true, after it solves the problem or it changes the answer to the problem, but that $10,000 in America is worth a lot, is a lot harder to come, is a lot easier to come by than $10,000 in Estonia.
Sure, and so they should adjust, because they adjust their gaming prices for all those regions. So that's fine. So that's a very fair complaint, and maybe in other regions it's less. But they set it at $100. At $100, it means that everybody puts their game up there. That's not a barrier at all.
And to the shovelware guys put 250 games, or it was 187? 187 games up at one time under a $100 price tag that basically paid less than $1 per game to put them up on Steam.
Yeah. So for us, even though we see revenue, this is the amount of units of GLSL 3 that we sold from 2015, 2016, 2017. You can see it going down on Steam. So our answer to that is we need to engage with other partners. So Humble is a big deal. GOG is a big deal. And you can see this orange line here. A lot of this is Humble sales. In 2017, we actually sold more units of GLSL. We had more GLSL owners on Steam than any other prior year, largely because of the deal with Humble. Yeah.
Does the acquisition of Humble give you guys any pause? Are you thinking about that internally?
Absolutely. I had a call with Humble today, and I have a call with IGN tomorrow. So for those that aren't familiar, IGN bought Humble. So, not pause for me, it's fantastic for me. I want competitors to Steam. I want people out there pushing Valve to fix this problem, because if they're the only people in the market, they'll just sit with what they have. IGN, I can tell you this because I don't have my call with them until tomorrow, so I'm not leaking anything. Awesome. My guess is IGN thinks Valve is weak, there's a discoverability problem, and they believe that they can be the curated answer, and they can provide you that front storefront for serious PC gamers to say, hey, listen, if we show it on our main page, you should be interested in this.
Also, they could help with reviews.
I hope not, but.
But IGN...
But of course, I wouldn't say that to their lawyer.
Yeah, well, no.
IGN wants to be the place where you come to get all your PC information, and then all your gaming information, really, and then if they can push you to a site where you can buy that, they see that as a place to start gaining momentum on Valve, which I think is a smart deal.
Are you doing Galaxy?
What's that?
Are you doing Galaxy?
Yeah. All of our games are on GOG. Star Control pre-order came out today. It's on 3 places you can get it: Steam, GOG, and direct from Stardock.
Yeah. Great technical article today too.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
If you
share with your friends.
I tweeted Brad and Stardock as soon as it came out.
He's a lawyer. He doesn't have friends. The reason I'm saying about Galaxy is in Turok, if Nathan buys a copy of it from GOG and you buy a copy of it from Steam, you can play head to head in a shared room. So yeah.
So we want our partners to succeed. Like I say, they are a lot of the solution to the problem for us. Once we're just trapped in that Steam ecosystem, then we're kind of at their mercy, and we don't like that at all. So we want competition out there in the distribution environment so that they can, everybody gets better.
But the more they work on their infrastructure, the less they're working on Half-Life 3.
Half-Life 3 will never come.
That's right. What is the last game that Valve has made that they didn't hire in a team for? That came in?
Dota?
Dota's external. I mean, Dota was literally external.
Team Fortress 2?
Is it Left 4 Dead 2?
Left 4 Dead's external.
That's external.
Yep, that was the mod pack show. Counter-Strike is external. I don't know the answer to this question. It's been a long time. Valve is not in the business of making games anymore. They haven't been for a long time. They're buying teams. Portal came in from a mod team. They liked the mod and they brought them in and released the game. All right. There.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Nathan. I'm going to talk some more. So one of the big things about Stardock is we have a focused differentiator strategy. So that means we care about a particular community. We don't care about all gamers. We're not going to get Half-Life players. They don't care about us. We don't care about them, vice versa. We have a particular community we're really deeply engaged with. And largely that's the strategy in the community. Star Control reaches out to that a little bit. But that means we have to care a lot about that tribe. So, little things. We start here. That means as we are reaching out to this community, we have support forums. We have support. We have forums. We've got Steam forums. We've got Reddit, Twitch, YouTube, every avenue we can have to engage with the users on as often as we can. So Paul's up there once a week, or has been up there once a week, twitching GLSL 3, forward going through development and after core development, to build trust with that tribe. Trust is incredibly important. It's hard to earn. It's easy to lose. It's absolutely core to our business. Part of that is being deeply engaged with the customer, which has a side effect, which is literally somebody who leaves a review or makes a forum post or responds on Twitch, that comes straight to the developer's desk. I'll get a Skype message. Hey, somebody didn't like such and such thing you guys put up last week. Fix it now. The users have a very direct access into the studio. Now, we don't listen to all of everything everybody says. Like, some people are just jerks of the internet. But certainly in aggregate, we care a lot about what the players want. That sort of feeds into some of these other things. So, once upon a time you put out a game, it was, Blockbuster sold all your copies in the first week. That era is over. We're in digital distribution. We have the long tail. We still sell a lot of copies of GLSL 2, which came out what, 12 years ago, some in the ancient days.
Hey, I'm still wearing this T-shirt.
Yeah.
It's a great T-shirt. Another piece of that is every time we sell, if we put up a GLSL 5, decade down the road, we're going to sell a lot of copies of GLSL 4 and GLSL 3 and GLSL 2 and GLSL 1 because they're all tied together. So that means over time, the value of the brand and the quality bar of the brand is incredibly important. You can't really see here, but these are all a bunch of Metacritic scores. You see they're all green. That's because I cut off all the ones that were yellow and red. But you see there's a lot of green here. Some of these games make pretty good money. Some of them will never make their budget back. But every one of these was a good release.
I can't believe that your hand is over the corporate machine.
Right. Every one of these helps the brand because that brand value really, really matters. We're going to keep selling the same brand forever. Which also leads to the last one here, which is iterate your way to fame and fortune. The big day one release is nowhere near as important as it used to be. We care about 1 year out, 2 year out, 3 year out, 4 year out. We care about having a lot of install base to sell DLC, to sell expansions, to continue to grow the value of the products and to continue to monetize on that.
Just curious, when you do a DLC or patch release, does it actually increase the retention, or does that actually get you more users whenever you do a DLC or update?
I don't know the answer to that question. I would think that it improves retention. Every time we put out a DLC, you see the user number spike. Every time you put out an expansion, you see the user number spike a lot. Our games tend to we have a few people who play a few hours. We have a substantial number of people who will be in there for 100, 200, 300 hours. People play GLSL 3 long time. I've got friends who have played GLSL 2 2,000 hours, ridiculously long amounts of time.
And that's really good for us because it's a game like Bioshock Infinite. I love Bioshock Infinite. It's a great game, but you play it for a weekend and then you're done, and you don't have much of an opportunity to sell DLC to it. But yeah, Nathan's exactly right. It's a marketing event when I put DLC out, so it gives us an excuse to go talk to reviewers and journalists. Put a recently updated on Steam to get people looking at the game. Like I said, Steam is infinite eyeballs. Every time you do something, every time you put a DLC out, they're like, oh, what's this GLSL thing? You have more sales for it. So a lot of it's just a marketing opportunity.
So, to Derek's point, and this is something that I was intimately involved in at Stardock during the time. When you do the patch, one of the things that happens is that Steam's got their updated games section. So bubble up to the top of that. So every time you do that, you attract a certain number. It's not the same thing as your day one release, but it's a mini release on it.
Okay. Right. And those same people potentially see all of these other titles in the back catalog. This also, in contrast to, everybody knows Visceral shut down this week, or is in the process of shutting down. That was one of my former studios. And I can virtually guarantee, I don't have any inside information, but I can virtually guarantee that's because they were making a game that was story-driven, that was going to be 12 hours of content, that people might rent or might buy, and then they were going to be done with it. The thing that EA hated when I was there anyways was GameStop, oddly enough. Because GameStop was eating all the profits. People would buy a game, they turn around and sell it a week later, and then EA made no money whatsoever off of resales. So that's certainly, like on The Sims, what drove the DLC there, and is largely driving our business model. Key resources and partners. So we've had the opportunity, because Brad's a really smart guy in his relationships across the industry, and was able to find really key players throughout the industry, like Soren Johnson, like Dan Baker, and Tim Kidd at Oxide. These guys who left Firaxis, left other companies, some really amazing talent that we're very lucky to have access to. We've got studio partners and technology partners. As Derek pointed out, being 64-bit, being DX12 and Vulkan, and all the multi-core has given us a lot of access to AMD and NVIDIA and Intel. And they're all really motivated to help us when we run into technical problems. All the engineers have been really fantastic. Incredibly smart guys. So our point there is, no matter who you are, no matter how big you are, no matter how much money you have, there's a lot of great talent that you cannot hire. The deep knowledge is spread out in the industry. And so the relationships between vendors, between studios, between individuals are incredibly important. I would not be able to survive on a day-to-day basis without these relationships. Obviously, the channel relationships, Steam and GOG and Humble Store and various others, API vendors. We have tight connections to Microsoft and to the Kronos group. We're actually Vulkan advisors now. Pretty excited about it. And there's a lot of value that's created in those relationships. So platform access, we were able to get into like DX12 drivers, or we were able to get Mantle drivers early and build up that top technology and have a voice in how those technologies evolved. Access to technology and tools, so we might get early builds of some of the tools. And again, a voice in those tools, we can report the bugs, people actually respond back. It's a great thing. Marketing partnership, AMD was great with this. If you go and install an AMD driver right now, right there it says, play actually the Singularity Escalation. Everybody who installs it sees that message. It's great. We love it.
They try to convince us that that's $3 million of marketing value that they're ranking. And I'm like, if you believe that, I'll just take the $3 million. You can take us out of that ad.
But it's still
certainly good.
NVIDIA would have said it was 300 million, so you're lucky.
And just thought leaderships and other. There's a lot of value in those relationships. It takes a lot of effort to build them, and there's a lot of value in them, and not necessarily today value, but long-term value. All right, so building the factory. I've got a couple of slides here. I had sort of a transport theme going on. First point here is that culture is incredibly important. It's hard to build culture, it's hard to maintain culture, it's hard to shift culture, but culture is critical. Having a team that cares about each other, that will support each other, that has free exchange of ideas is great. Having a team that's at each other's throats, that undermines each other. It's possible to have people on your team who are absolute poison, and it's potentially really hard to change that. So again, culture, like planting seeds, is something that takes a long time, but it's absolutely worth every bit of that effort. You're cultivating a studio, you're cultivating a team. Part of that for us is the internal marketplace of ideas. I'll actually get to that a little bit later. If anybody has read Good to Great, one of their big points is get the right people on the bus. We would much rather suffer being short-handed for a while rather than hiring the wrong people. You want to get the right people on the bus, you want to keep the right people on the bus. You don't want to let the wrong people onto the bus. It's hard to find the right people. Hiring is a lot harder than you think, especially in Southeast Michigan where it really does snow.
It's a rumor.
Hiring's hard, culture's hard, they're really important. And once you get everybody together, keep pushing the team cohesion. We're all in the boat together, we all support each other. Next point here, so capability versus capacity. So I'm personally really interested in, there are 20 things we have to do from an engineering standpoint. We have to know AI, we have to know multiplayer, we have to know multicore, we have to know sound, we have to know controllers, we have to know GOG networking APIs, whatever that set of things is. And you might be able to do that with 3 people having that set of skills, or you might have that with 15 people mixing together have that skills. Having the capability is different than having the capacity. So sometimes you need 3 people, because your project's only 3 people deep. Sometimes you need 15 people. If you're an EA, you may need 100 people, because you've got a bigger or smaller project. But it's more important to have the capability than to have capacity. You can, again, make up in time against capacity. I have a belief that, use the whiteboard here. So in any given game project, you can start with 3 people.
We can get rid of the
inventory store. But you need a designer, an engineer, and an artist. And given enough time, you can build anything. It might take you 100 years. So typically you see in pre-production, you just have a few people. Then you get
There's an audio guy out there in the audience, right? Out there, Nathan.
You can contract that work. And localization, you can contract that work, no problem. When a game project, you need a few people up front, getting your pipelines laid out, getting your design worked out, work it out on paper first. Don't invest a bunch of money before you've got your ideas all figured out. Then you need a bunch of people to production, because you've got to build all those ships, you've got to build all those trees, you've got to build all the land, whatever it is. And then you get to post-production when you're just filing the game and you need 3 people again. So the way traditionally game studios, the way it was this way at EA when I was there. This was January, then you hire a bunch of people, and then you go gold in October, and then you fire them all. One of the things that Stardock has done, which I'm greatly appreciative of, is we overlap projects. So you can shift that capacity around. You have multiple projects, so you maintain the capability. So some of our guys, I'll use Jesse as an example here, is a phenomenal graphics programmer. He gets shuffled around all the time across projects.
Banjo player.
Also a pretty good banjo player. We didn't hire him for that though. So many hats. We're fairly small. We tend to wear a lot of hats. Each person has a lot of different capabilities. Scott's our example here. He can do some engineering. He can do some art. He can do some design. And he's pretty good at all of those things. He's not the best at any of them. He's pretty good at all of them. Whereas you get to a larger studio and you're making hair, and you're doing sweat, and you're doing doors, and you're doing rain but not snow, because you have to have these really deep pipelines to hit schedules. You just throw more and more people at it. We don't like that personally. We like the many hats. Building team takes time. You got form, storm, norm, conform, sequence. One thing we have to be really careful about, because every member of our team is critical, is the hit by a truck syndrome. So maybe somebody leaves, maybe somebody gets hit by a truck, maybe somebody just gets sick for a couple weeks. That's potentially a critical failure for us. So to counteract that, we do everything that gets checked in gets peer reviewed, so somebody knows how it works. And everyone has an understudy. So I'm not the best graphics guy, but I know a lot of what Jesse does. Let's say Neil's not necessarily the best multiplayer guy, but he knows an awful lot of what I know. Like we have overlapping skills, so that if somebody's incapacitated, production doesn't stop. Learning organization. So the reality is, when I started, Vulkan didn't exist. DirectX 12 didn't exist. The knowledge in the marketplace to do multi-core engines essentially didn't exist. So you can't hire people for skills that don't exist yet. And Lord knows what we're going to need 3 years down the road. We have to have an organization that's continually learning. Individuals are going out and watching GDC talks, watching YouTube videos on, Rob's got C++, deep C++ voodoo, every day. Reading textbooks, sharing with lunch and learn, sharing in internal channels, building that knowledge base year over year, keeping a competitive edge. The other part of building the factory, so this gets into a little bit of the project management and whatnot. First question, what is the goal of a business?
Make a product.
Sustainability.
Make money.
I'm going to go with you. To make more profit now and in the future. So I will plug Elijah Goldrot. If you have not read his books, go buy them off of Amazon tonight. You can buy them for like $2 a piece, used copy. The goal, critical chain, isn't it obvious? Go read these things. They cover a lot of this material. One of our big challenges is making success repeatable. So for instance, we had Sins of Solar Empire, which was phenomenally successful. We had GLSL 2, phenomenally successful. War Magic, not so much. So one of our challenges is figure out what we did right, make that repeatable.
It's hard, particularly for the games industry, because we're not building houses. There's no blueprint. There's no we're not making burgers. Every time anybody in this room engages on a new game, you are making something that has never existed before. And that means that you don't know what to expect until you go through it. So it's that repeatability is really tough.
And we're constantly running into new technical challenges, production challenges, market challenges. The market we face today is radically different than it was 2 years ago. It's radically different than it will be 2 years from now. And that's the truth.
Since you guys do multiple projects at once, do you have a director that runs multiple projects, or each project has its own director, like that leads the project, or project leads?
Yeah,
or
a little of this, a little of that.
Okay.
I don't know if you've got a better answer for that.
No, I mean, that's right. I wish we had a dedicated producer for each project that was anything substantial. Like, we have some games, GLSL 3 is more maintenance mode right now, so we have 2 developers that are on it, patching, adding in new features, making sure content keeps increasing. So there isn't a dedicated producer for that. There isn't a dedicated designer for it. But we do tend to, Stardock just runs understaffed in general, so we try to stretch it thin, and it means that sometimes we have to give games a little more time. Because it's easier for us to move deadlines than to hire in people and then be in a situation where like, oh, we don't really need them. So no.
Okay. Critical path, and these things are sort of mixed up. But, everybody's familiar with the notion of critical path. Got a picture here. Basically, there is a path through every project, which is the critical path. And if that path extends by a day, the whole project extends by a day. So you've got to be aware of where your critical paths are and use that as an organizing principle. Time to market really, 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 really matters. Sort of counter what Derek said here. I've gotten burned really bad by, man, if we put this product out 6 months earlier, it would have been amazing. But instead, it came out. Here's an example. Who's the band that played after the Beatles? Nobody knows, right? If that band had played before the Beatles, we'd be like, oh yeah, they're pretty good. They played after the Beatles, nobody cares. Time to market matters. How do you hit big deadlines? Anybody? How do you hit big deadlines?
Planning.
You hit little deadlines.
Ah, all right.
So this is a certain amount of rigor to realize that break the project down. It's little deadlines. Treat deadlines as important because they are in order to get your projects out on time and on quality. I don't want to dig too much into these, but there is a complicated flow of requirements and specifications and digital materials, and we essentially have a very reconfigurable factory that is, if you were to draw a chart of it, would be extraordinarily complicated. So we have to have people who can figure that all out.
So regarding the multiple projects at the same time sharing resources, that also reinforces the need for timeliness, because if you need to finish task A on game 1 to get over on task A on game 2, you have to hit your, if you miss on the first one, it has a ripple effect.
Yeah, usually there's a priority on our projects. So there is a game that gets priority 1 in general, so if it needs resources, it gets them. And then the other games will adjust their schedules around the first one. Like Star Control is king right now, so Star Control gets staffing, and then other teams will work around that. For exactly that reason, so we're not extending the critical chain.
That sort of leads into the next line, which is the critical chain. Back to Jesse. This is Jesse. This is all of the projects which need his capability. So the idea there being, if you add one more task to his queue, everything else pushes back. So you have to, it's another organizing principle, organize around what are your scarce resources. And if that's a scarce capability, then organize around that. If somebody, so when I started, one of my jobs was literally to take things off Jesse's plate. Because that act by itself shortened the schedule. Core competencies versus outsourcing, so it's same idea. Like, if you have to have your artist and engineer and designer in-house, maybe you outsource the audio, maybe you outsource the localization, maybe you outsource porting to another platform. Because getting those capabilities is expensive, and if you don't need them all the time, you don't want to be paying for them all the time. And it just comes also down to the question of scale. This is the classic buy versus lease argument. Project lifecycle. So you've got your V lifecycle, you've got continuous integration. I really like Open Up, which isn't really easy to see here, but it's a derivative of the rational unified process. So Open Up is an open unified process. The big idea is you front load risk right here with the red line, and you reduce risk over time, and you increase value over time. And there are certain activities you do in each of the cases in order to front load risk. And so, agile-ish continuous integration. The days of we're just going to ship it all in one day are over. Back to Derek's point about early access, I'm a huge advocate for first you have the users in the building, then you've got a few users outside the building, then you've got a couple thousand users, and you've got 10,000 users, and there's another famous curve here. A lot of the curves are not complicated, but they matter, which is simply your number of defects as a function of time basically looks like this. So the idea is you want to capture all of this in early access before people are making reviews. Either capture inside the building or with trusted people. And then when you got here to real release, I've got a pretty bug-free product. But the reality is, without actual users throwing themselves at your product on all their different crazy hardware configurations, you'll never find all the fixes in-house.
It's one of the things I think you told me about tools development. How do you make a tool better? You cannot make a tool better?
Use it.
Use it.
Eat your own dog food. That should be a line. Eat your own dog food. Similar point. So there's an anecdote about the Suez Canal. People have been spending millions and millions of dollars trying to build the Suez Canal. It had this great economic value. Projects failing, projects failing, projects failing, projects failing. What's wrong? What are we doing wrong here? We're hiring the best people. And then another company came in and said, oh, well, your problem is you need to move dirt. You're digging dirt out of the ground, you need to move it away. If you make that fast, then you'll finish the project. Well, it's kind of the same way with tools. As a concrete example, if you have artists who are editing XML files in order to get content to your game, it's really bad from a scheduling standpoint, and it's really bad from a motivational standpoint. Maybe you put a tool in there for them and speed them up by a factor of 100. Tools really matter. Understanding where your costs really are.
So have you guys released the games post my have you released any games that allow user creation? I don't mean just ship creation, but
that's what the article was about.
I've got more slides.
Okay, all right, sorry.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
I talked about that. Oh, another question. What's 90% of a game worth?
Nothing.
Nothing. If it doesn't go out the door, it's worthless. Management theory will guide you the wrong way. If you go get your MBA, what they'll tell you is that chair-ish, it's a bunch of wood, you've invested in the materials. Well, it's worth 90% of a chair because we put all this money into it. No, unless you ship it, it's worthless.
Well, there's sentimental value.
What's that?
There's sentimental value, but that's not what we're talking about.
Sentimental value doesn't keep anybody employed. You have to ship. The last point here is functional alignment. Notice it's not aligned. This is something we could all be better about, like getting engineering and design and marketing and accounting and finance all aligned really matters. This was something we built sort of near the end of GLSL 3 where we were exercising the process, and I just want to formalize it and I want to share it with you guys, which was basically like, how do we do quality? So first, quality just means conformance to requirements and absence of defects. So one, you've got to have good requirements, and two, it can't be broken. And this just sort of bubbles up from you as a developer, demand good requirements and get it right, but you're going to make mistakes. So get the next person over to review it, and they're going to make mistakes. So then you get QA to look at it, but they're going to make mistakes. So then you have early access, but they're going to miss stuff. So then it's going to go out in the wild, but you've got these sensing mechanisms so you can detect that there was a crash or somebody's angry in the forums, and then you respond to it and you get the patch out. But it's sort of building up layers of defense, layers of risk management. I feel like we actually do pretty good on this. It's been hard won, but I feel like we do pretty good on this.
Yeah, different developers have different defect rates. So what's the chance that what they check in works? It's the thing we always talk, you have to test your code. You have to test it. You have to test it. And we've unfortunately had to let some developers go for their defect rate was just too high.
Yeah. Can I add a separate thought? This is not exactly a question. So I've spoken here. Larry's invited me to speak here. I do legal contracts for things like game developers. And what is articulated here at the top is exactly what you would want to see when he talks about outsourcing or contracting out for the services. That's exactly what you need to come up with and that you need to frame in your contract for what is going to be the deliverable that's delivered to you, either in a statement of work or a master services agreement or whatever that audio is going to look like. You need to be able to articulate what it is that you want, or else you're not going to be able to know whether they've breached the contract or whether they've delivered what it is that you asked for. Sorry. I'm not trying to take over your.
So there's,
I just really like that.
There's an old joke about specs that an elephant is a mouse built to arm your specifications. Because the specs said it should be at least 2.5 inches high. Well, 12 feet is at least 2.5 inches high. It should be great, got that check. Should have a tail and big ears, got that check. You know, and what you end up with is not, you have to be really careful and very precise in your point that's really good is that I thought about that mostly as an external process. It's also got to be from your internal.
All right, so reduce, reuse, recycle. We're cost conscious. We're not the low cost provider, but we are cost conscious. Overruns hurt. So we exercise reuse wherever we can. So that might be technical design, that might be architectural components. So I don't need to write another linked list. I don't need to write another quaternion library. We've got corporate machine code we're still sitting on that does a lot of stuff that we still, like string processing hasn't changed. Math hasn't changed. We can reuse a lot of that. Probably not as much as we should, honestly, but we reuse a lot.
Hey Larry, how much time do we have? What do we need to cut?
Go for another 15 minutes.
Yeah, I can fit that. I've got like 2 more sentences. Make remixing core to the design. So GLSL 3 is great for this. Every time we play it, it's a little bit different, but it's not a B, C, D, E narrative and you're done. We leverage our art investment. So this is the shipbuilder, or actually no, that's the Empire Builder from GLSL 3. But we do shipbuilders. We do the tile builder in the elemental games. We do the shipbuilder in Star Control. We do the things that we can do to reuse art and get the most mileage out of it, get to leverage our assets. Last point here is do postmortems. Read other people's postmortems. Find out what you did wrong, do it better next time. Nobody talks about problems, they never get fixed. Face your problems head on. Don't ignore them. This is what we actually do really good at. We data drive, we're mod-centric and we crowdsource. So data driving means Derek can go in a weekend and tweak some XML and really make substantial changes to the game design without having to dive into assembly code in order to do so. That allows us to put out DLC, that allows us to incrementally improve the game, that allows us to reconfigure things for balance. It's data drive everything you possibly can. Modability is absolutely core for Stardock. We didn't make a Star Wars mod, but somebody else did, and I think here it's amazing. Because we really went out of our way on Sins to make everything as moddable as humanly possible. Crowdsourcing, how many ships are there now?
14,000.
14,000. So 14,000 really good, better than anything that we could probably. My brand's pretty good, but probably better than anything. A couple hundred of them are better than anything you could build in-house. If you want to go and download the entirety of the Thrawn version of the Star Wars Imperial ships, you can do that really good because we gave users the tools, we built in workshop support, and we made it core to the design.
Gabe Newell has a really great quote where he says that Valve is happy to compete with any other party out there except for one. They always give you buy, and that's their community. That was
Wisdom of Crowds, really good. You should read it. Also, Chris Anderson's Long Tail, throw in that same bucket. I don't want to belabor the point. Don't build stuff that you can buy. It's like, don't make a 3D model. You don't need to. There's really good stuff out there. Don't build your own build solution, which I've seen companies do. There are better solutions out there that you can adapt. Be conversant in open source technology. If you want to review the slide, yeah, sure. Mixing cutting edge with production. So we have to be cutting edge in order as a differentiator, and because if you don't take little risks, you've taken a huge risk. You cannot sit still in this industry. It's sort of a Red Queen phenomenon. You have to run faster than environmental ones. Yes?
What's a Red Queen phenomenon?
So the Red Queen from Alice Through the Looking Glass and what she found there. The Red Queen has to run in order to keep up with her world. Okay. If she ever stopped, the world would been past her. So she's always running. You don't notice that she's running because she stays with the environment. So we very much have that same issue working in high tech, where we have to keep up. And to keep up, you actually have to keep ahead. Because if you're just keeping up, then you're behind. So we don't just put in new tech for the fun of new tech, but we have to be strategic about it. New technology is expensive. It takes a lot of engineering time. It takes artist tiers to get new technologies online. So we have to think hard about these things, work with our partners, figure out where they're going, what the important things are and aren't. We do a lot of just, hey, Tim, go research this thing on your own time and come back and tell us about it. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome. We're all learning. And everybody in the team is encouraged to do that. Go learn about something, share it with the team. A lot of that's organic, but it pushes the whole team forward. Get involved in industry consortia, whether that's IEEE or Kronos or GDC or AGDC or Siege or what have you. Read up on the emerging standards. Somebody else's problem. There are no problems that are unique to any given studio. Somebody else is already thinking about it. They're probably thought about harder than you have. Just a couple random thoughts. One of the things I love about Stardock is that we have an executive who can actually make decisions. Back to the EA example, because we had so many people and we're working with committed artists and big third parties, it was virtually impossible to get a decision made. I literally had to have 10 people all agree, get in the room, put their hands together and say, yes, we're going to do rain. Yeah, okay, we're up, yes. Sure, we'll do rain, yes, okay. We don't have that problem. We can actually make decisions and execute on them, which is great. Limits affect cognitive load and attention. So people have scarce resources. Maybe everybody else can be on all the time. I can't. There's a limited amount of caring about other people's problems I can have in a given day. I think that that's a fairly common trait. Limits of attention and cognitive load, some days I'm doing easy stuff, you do it for 12 hours. Some days I'm doing really hard math stuff, you just run out of that asset. Sometimes you just have to go to the next day. This also feeds into, as a developer, maybe get a producer to go on forums. Maybe don't go there yourself. Maybe let them distill what the actual bugs are instead of screaming at people on the internet.
I was asked this week by a producer that I've worked with for a number of years if I had visited the bug tracker. And I said my life will be quite complete if I never have to visit the bug tracker.
Realistically, relationships fall apart, people develop drinking problems, people develop anxiety and depression. Be aware that your resources are limited. I've been on teams, I've been on projects where I couldn't taste anymore. I couldn't hold a conversation anymore. Take care of yourself. If you're in that situation, find a different job. Games are great, but it's not worth that. Plans versus planning. Plans are worthless, planning is everything. Figure out what you're going to do and then realize that that's wrong, but if you don't plan ahead, you miss out. And then when I started EA, this was on somebody's cubicle and I absolutely love it. Optimism misses deadlines. Take contingencies. Plan for things to fail. Murphy is real. If you think, I'm going to put this thing in for the last minute and I'm going to put the build out at 1 p.m. and everything's going to be great, it won't. It will fail. It'll be catastrophic. People will be yelling at you. Take every precaution you can. I'm done. Thank you, Larry, for that.
I saw that Mars snuck in. Where is he? Sitting at the back where you can't be mocked. Is Stephen here? Stephen?
We can mock him from here.
Oh, good. All right. Hey, how are you, Stephen? Pretty good. Do you want a couple of minutes to get set up?
Yeah, I need to grab some water.
Please do. Okay. Hey, guys, take a couple of minutes and we'll be back for the next speaker.
I ripped my cup apart. I have no idea what I just said.
Isn't that always the way?
Very thirsty.
You guys are all. I get that. 6 is
I have never worked in a company.
I remember I was talking to one of our partners and they suggested well, a lot of the partners are going to making their own stores. A lot of the developers are making their own stores. Responding, yes. Well, we've been down there. We're not doing pizza. That's awesome. Good to see you again. Oh, nice to meet you too.
Been there, done that. Got a t-shirt.
That's all right.
Oh no, I was just saying congratulations. No, absolutely.
Unless something more like
Brad has a philosophy.
Hey Larry. I got it. Cut out. I got it.
Thank you for coming.
Of course.
Been reading guys like 1 year or $1,000. We can visit $1,000 resources. That I clearly has a more work.
So that's as soon as I told Brad it's a company. I'm the biggest starting
That's something you go back and look at the early I'm like, I have to take a selfie.
Now a second use for us to press that.
What do you think it's stuff where it's
still selling. I love it. Building isn't there. So whatever you're starting with, it's taking to work for
No, I agree. That's exactly correct. We're talking about the game, and I think it's really long direction. I mean,
like put this on
Remember Tom worked briefly?
Really remember Tom?
We sat in your seats.
I'm sorry, what?
Lou.
Hi, Lou. I think you can introduce me as Tom Hope's brother. Yeah, I think he was there for 25 days. He moved to California to work on Destiny. But that speech is exactly right. He's working on like trigger pressures for assault rifles. I mean, like it's so narrowly tailored. That design for
each mechanic one I want to build. I build house build for the HTC.
Yeah, we're just trying to remember what I went to Brad had a Christmas thing. That's awesome. So wait, there? All right. This is where I pretend I'm the game but bring up the story.
dedicated resources.
It's going to be in the wall. I'm not curious. I mean, how about our NDA?
We want to get it out to but like anything before it's anywhere near the calendar, it's hard to do. It's kind of they're working on you can really tell and then you've got guys who are control over heavy code. I have knowledge of it's a little steep, yeah.
That seems to be the Stardock way. Enjoy the fire.
Anxiety and it's evening out. I've reached the point where I'm using in situations where I wanted to do it. It wasn't coming out of their height.
I've lived for a long time. I've lived in this neck of the woods for forever, so I'm past the Stardock.
How much of a
they're younger than I should
as opposed to
yeah. So I had to talk about that for a long time.
or have a conversation. That's how it feels like. We have 400 as much stuff and I know there are 200 more. Everyone takes that step.
I would have loved to do that. I would love to staff
that's all I'm saying. The quality on the outside really good. But no, really, that's what it's going to take.
Right this second, I was working on a expansion. Yes,
I really thought we sort of use a set of tools loosely bolted together. Yeah, I like to use Funbars, use Singularity, use Google Docs. They don't use any of them to do well. It's definitely an area.
and he stopped talking. Until last week. So it's good. The things I found the job is well, there's a lot of
Hey, everybody!
That was what I was hoping for.
You're a good teacher, Larry.
Well, which one do you need? Power? I got you.
All right, folks, you guys comfy?
Yes.
Yeah.
I make a living.
If you don't know me, I'm Mars. I'm the director of the Game Art program at Lawrence Tech. Hey, Jordan. How's it going? I know a lot of you. So I'm just introducing Steven Sizavala. He's a cool guy, working on cool games. He just recently exhibited his game that he's going to talk about at GX in Columbus. So,
Expect to get on screen? Right. So, like I said, I'm Steven Zavala, founder and president for life of Flyover Games. Currently it's just me, but it sounds way better when you're the founder and president for life. I've released a couple of mobile games in the past, Cold Popper and Knife That Guy. But here I'm here to talk to you today about my recent project, which is Wavecraft. So what is Wavecraft? It's not going to wait. Is it? Yeah, I'm on the free Wi-Fi. I don't know if the actual Wi-Fi password is. But imagine there's a video here playing of the game. I'm going to skip through. All right, it's a multiplayer puzzle brawler developed in Unity 3D. I've been working on it on and off for about 3-ish years now. There we go.
Yeah.
Is it going to work?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Hey. Thank you. So yeah, here's a bit of the trailer. The idea is simple. It's a combination of a fighting game and puzzle game. You maneuver a character on a board of mysterious colored blocks, making matches, and launching at your opponent to try to hit them. It's kind of like a reverse tug of war. Every time you score a hit, you push that center line forward. Ranges your goal line, you win. And it's 3-ish years because it's been kind of on and off. Now it's going to be on for real until I actually finish it up, hopefully early next year. Or that try. And that try. I won't let that stuff. Alright, so where'd it come from? Like every good story, this one starts with, so I had this awesome dream last night, man. And in this dream, I played this game where characters threw different square edge waves at each other in like an isometric view. And I woke up and I really wanted to play this game, and I was bummed out a minute later when I realized it doesn't exist. So I had to go ahead and make it myself. Here was the first draft of it. You see, you have sort of a board up here with characters running around. You have like a puzzle bobble kind of thing here. The idea was you would make matches in puzzle bobble, which would fill up like your mana meters or whatever, and then you'd use that mana to attack up on this board here. The only downside to that is it requires playing 2 games at once, which is impossible for people to do, especially myself. So I brought it in the next day to work, and that guy over there in the orange hoodie, Willow, he told me that, yeah, this is too complicated, no one can play it, and I argued for like a second and then agreed. But as you notice, I did nail the name right there, Wave Crash. Pretty good. I had the first draft done. Absolutely. Look it up, easy. The other ideas were Wave Jammer, but then that'd be like Wind Jammers, which is you don't want to step on their toes. Second draft. So I decided I was really attached to the idea of it being a puzzle game and a fighting game. But of course, doing the 2 games at once was too hard. So the solution was take those 2 ideas, mash them together into one idea by having the puzzle and fighter be in the same place. So you see, it's all on one board now. You still have 2 characters. You have the idea of throwing waves at each other with the blocks. The one big difference is my initial idea was that the waves would always be in like one linear pattern there. That was shot down the first time I was sent in for playtesting at work, when another friend of mine had the idea that he expected the waves to keep their shape that they were in before you attack. And I thought about it and realized that, yeah, that does make sense, and it's way more fun, so I went with that. But since then, the rules have pretty much stayed consistent over the past 3 years that I've been working on it. Now that I have the rules down, I can come up with my goals for the actual gameplay design. I know I want something that was competitive, but accessible, and to be something that's like a fighting game that even I could play. Because I love fighting games, I love the way they look, I'll watch the strategy videos, I'll read up on the character bios, and then I'll go to play them and be in for an hour and a half online, and then I'll quit for like the next 2 weeks until I go back to a new game. And I didn't want that problem here. I wanted something that I could actually beat some people in, because winning is fun, even for a game developer. I also wanted something where you really play your opponent, not solitaire. Because a lot of those games, they do have some level of interaction. You have your Tetris attacks and your Super Puzzle Fighter 2. But for the most part, if you do well on your own, you'll do well in competition. You just look at your board, set as many blocks as you can, and you'll crush most people. So I want something where you really had to like watch your opponent and react to them rather than just play the board. And the last goal was to make it hype, because every game should be hype, at least the games of this variety. And of course, nothing is original. Like I mentioned, there were some games that were big influences. I love puzzle games, play a lot of them. Super Puzzle Fighter 2, of course, just the base idea of a puzzle game where the puzzle actually represents properties, and the blocks actually represented physical objects. In this case, it was rockets and space junk. And in my case, it's mysterious waves of orange energy. So, and it was like Luminous, which had a tug-of-war gameplay going on, where as you succeeded, you control more of the board. But on Luminous, it was crazy unfair, because all you had to do was make matches and you got the board. So, you'd make matches, get more of the board, make more matches, get more of the board, and it's pretty much decided like the first round, done. So pretty much I took those 3 ideas, mashed them all together, and tried to make something new. And were there challenges? Yep, that's what I'm here to talk about, mostly as suggested by Mars when I said, what next am I supposed to talk about for my game craft? So the main things we're focused on here are developing the rules of the game, the character designs for them mechanically, the art integration, and getting attention. I'm giving that cursor because I just noticed that it's bugging me. Picture here was the very first build I ever took to a public event. This was taken to, I believe it was YumaCon or Midwest Media Expo, one or the other. The big takeaway from that event is if you're demoing your game from the table shared by the tech support team for the arcade, everyone's going to think you're tech support for the arcade, and no one's going to ask you about your game. They're going to ask you to fix the DDR machine, which I cannot do. I tried my hardest, but no. All right, so we're defining the rules. The biggest part of this was early playtesting. Like I said, it started first with friends and coworkers that could course into playing the game, moved on from there to public events, and also to distribute builds online. I've gotten some good feedback from some people playing online for a few hours and saying, hey, this doesn't make sense, or what's up with this. There's been a lot of adjustments to it, especially the speed and timing. The game originally was way too slow. So that's one thing that I've learned is those minor adjustments can go a long way to actually making the game fun. You have the same set of mechanics, but you just make the waves move faster, make the barriers tick down faster, and some of your more engaging games because people actually have to like look at the game, not just like look down every 5 seconds. And there's also been ongoing mechanical additions. Even years into its lifespan, I still find some things where just a little tweak here or there can go a long way. In this case, this is showing the second win mechanic. Hana on the right there gets pushed back into a corner where she only has one hit left before she loses, but then she scores a hit and gains a second win, which makes her immune for a few seconds. This was added due to feedback I got that said that it felt hopeless when you're down to one hit because you had so little board left. I want people to be at a disadvantage because that's the point. Don't get hit, so you don't be at a disadvantage. But I still wanted that gap there where they could, get an awesome comeback. So you have to have some minor success, and you give it a major reward. And also punishes the other player if they decide to just want to toy with you for 5 minutes instead of actually finishing the game. And because it feels really bad when you're down to like one hit left, and then they just roll it back on you the next 10 seconds, and you lose. It tells you don't be a punk, just win, just end it. Also, another thing I learned is that. Awkward drink break. Another thing I learned is that rules can just be convenient. In this case, there was a scenario I encountered early on where one wave would be coming at you from an enemy, and it would overlap where your wave would be when you attack. And I didn't know how to deal with that. If I dealt with it to be consistent with the other wave crashing behaviors, where 2 waves can crash and cancel out, I would have had to do math to figure out, like, okay, well, it's this far past, so I'll start crashing halfway through, or it's all the way past, so maybe I'll destroy it, or maybe I'll just ignore it, and there'll be holes in the blocks. And it was a whole lot of work, and a lot of scribbling on paper and making me look like a crazy person. So I went with the easier solution, which is just blow it up. Your waves overlap with the other wave, just blow it up. It looks cool, it feels good when you're back in the corner and you knock out their entire attack and counter with your own, and it's easier. So that's when I realized sometimes hard work isn't really worth the results, and you should just be lazy and go with what's fun and easy. Next up, character design. This is what I would do all day, every day if I didn't have the rest of the game to make. I could just make dozens of characters and never finish it, which is why I've capped the characters now at 7 until I actually launch it, because each character is just another few weeks of me messing around with ideas, and I can't afford that anymore. Of course, the goals for characters are 1, make them fun. That's the point of the game, be fun. 2, be different, otherwise why would I add the character? 3, simple. This was more of a personal goal. See, each character is defined. They have a trait there, which is unique, and a special attack, which is like an attack with a specific number. In this case, it's 6 purple blocks, and has a specific property there. I wanted players to be able to see the character on the character select screen and determine roughly what they do. So I limited myself internally. You get 3 lines of text for the trait and 3 lines for the special, and that describes most of it. There's some little nuances here, like you don't know what the delay is, you don't know what a clone really is, you don't know what the attack's going to be, but you at least know what to expect when you use it. And 4, be balanced, because that is the one thing that players will obsess over endlessly, whether or not they really understand what balance is or what the purpose of balance is.
Steve, real quick question on that.
Yep.
So if I have, is it cost of 6 purple?
Yep, it means if you get a group of 6 purple blocks and attack, it'll use that special.
Okay.
Every character has, well, they overlap some colors, but each character has a theme color, usually based on the color clothes they wear, and a different cost.
So is there any advantage to like picking a character that's purple over a character that's orange?
No, it's just for variety, really. It's also, like, I thought about having just one group of blocks be the special blocks, but then the problem is, since you steal the board when you get a hit, if they had special blocks up front, you steal a special blocks and suddenly get a much bigger advantage. Right. Whereas if I'm playing purple and you're playing a red, then I steal your red blocks. It's bad for you, but it doesn't necessarily give me like a bonus. Like I'm not doing better.
Which you balance. Right.
Yeah. But yeah, also, and if anyone else has any questions, I'm not used to talking for very long stretches of time without interruption, so this is unfamiliar for me. So if you have anything, just yell it out. I mean, besides like insults, save those for the end. I like that those one-on-one. All right, so learning things from character design. First off, some things just aren't fun. In Wave Crash's case, delayed gratification mechanics weren't good. because matches are over really quickly, usually. They can be over in like less than 30 seconds. It's really one-sided, or even if it's back and forth, it can still only be a matter of minutes. So I had ideas for characters where their special would just give them power up, make them stronger later. And that wasn't fun, because if you get stronger later and then get beaten now, the later doesn't help you at all. Other things were, so in Belmont's case, his trait turns one block of the opponent's side into a skull block whenever he attacks with 4 blocks. The idea behind him was to have that sense of sort of like creeping drag, like you gain more influence over the person's board, and then you blow up that influence with his special. And the idea behind that is, even if you never use his special, you still get the advantage of the jump blocks during the time, because the other person's playing with 6 colors, making it hard for them to make matches. And which leads me to situational mechanics. In Belmont's case, his original special were those large green blocks that didn't move anywhere, which are great if your opponent was blind and just ran into them, not great if they're actually looking at the board and don't run into them. So, although I did like the flavor of it, since it was like columns of flame shooting up off the ground, it wasn't useful, so I switched it to the more conventional waves that I use that do move forward in a straight line and can actually hit someone even if they are actively playing the game. And the last thing that wasn't fun that I noticed was things that just happened. One of my early ideas was a character that had a more powerful attack every like X attacks. And the problem is you don't think about that. You just attack, and then, oh, every 6th attack is better? Cool. But you never have to like take into account what it's going to do or how you're playing. You just attack, and eventually good things will happen. And that's not interesting for a player or to play against if you just get beaten by automatic things. I mean, that's the bane of every game's existence is the button masher who still somehow manages to beat them by hitting kick over and over again. So, yeah. Next, everyone is special, even you guys. So just remember, that's the big takeaway of this whole talk, really, is you're all special. I like to make different characters because it encourages new play styles. It's even a simple game like Wave Crash, there's different ways to go about it, and I like to highlight those. And also, it doesn't take a lot. I'm working with a really limited mechanical palette. I got waves, I got blocks, I have characters running around. Not a whole lot you can do there, but there's still like, I mean, it's like trying to cook with like the stuff you got in your fridge. You have leftovers, but you can still combine those in different ways. My one tip for this is I find a rule for the game, and then I break it. In this example, we have Yo on the left and Seth on the right. Yo is like the Ryu of the game. He does not super special in any way. He's like all around okay. But Seth's thing is normally the taller a wave is, the slower it moves to give you more time to react to a larger attack. But for Seth, all of his waves move the same speed. So that encourages you to build taller rather than shorter. And also discourages building shorter because your waves would move slower. So you see here, they both attack with this maximum height waves. Seth's moves much faster, and it really highlights to the player that everyone's waves don't behave this way. They might not even realize that's a rule until they read that one character breaks that rule, and then they'll keep that in mind for later. Next up, some things just aren't fair. Some strengths need a weakness. Here we have Hana on the left. She was my 3rd character in the game, and the one where I really started breaking rules. She only needs 2 blocks to attack rather than 3 like every other character does, meaning she can send attacks at a much higher rate. And at first that was it, that was her only difference, and she was far and away the best character in the game. So I had to come up with a way to counteract that. And in this case, I made her waves move, or her blocks fall much slower. And you can't attack with blocks until they hit the ground, so it means that she has to move around to make attacks rather than matching up groups. And it also punishes her for making larger groups because then you're waiting around longer for the blocks to fall. And also, some mechanics are just too polarizing. I call this the Little Mac effect. If you've ever played Smash Bros. 4, you know Little Mac is very fast and very strong on the ground, and he's useless in the air. So if you're new to the game, you get beat up by Little Mac constantly, you complain on forums that he's busted, and you quit the game. But if you're used to the game, you just stand next to the edge and wait for him to come to you and just throw him away over and over again until the round's over. And it's still not a great experience. So in this case, the one mechanic that I found was way too polarizing was double damage. Normally when you get hit by a wave, it pushes the line forward once. I tried a character that pushes the line forward 2 spaces, and it just wasn't fun, regardless of what the actual downside was to it. If you make a mistake, it would still knock you out right there, and that's just not a good experience. Next up, art is hard. And another drink break. You can appreciate my work while I'm drinking. So this was my first time working with an actual artist, rather than myself messing around with Inkscape. And because I knew I needed actual characters for this game. I couldn't just do this with squares or circles. I want actual people throwing actual punches, because that's the whole point of the game. It's a fighting puzzle game. I have a very loose definition of art direction. Originally, I went pixel art because it was cheap. I was shopping for artists. Director art said, hey, I can do a character, and it'll only be like $800 to $1,200. And then the dude was like, "Yeah, I get you 2 characters for like $300." So it was pretty obvious what I was going to go with. Once I had the Pixlar down, I went modeled after the Scott Pilgrim game a lot, as far as the character proportions, the big head, small body. I like that a lot. And yeah, my typical way of doing things is I literally just make a folder, throw in some reference images, say I want Eve from WALL-E plus Drossel from Obscure Animation Fireball Charming by Disney Japan, which you guys should also look up. It's good. You can find it on YouTube. Sometimes it's on YouTube. And then I got Phoebe, the robot with the little LED head and little hand. Also, miscommunication is expensive. Turns out artists like pictures more than words. They are visual people for some reason. I don't know. But so originally, I described what I wanted in a level in terms of words. I need it to be this high, I need it to be this big. It's going to be split into a background and a floor. And then the artist came back to me with a beautiful picture that didn't match those dimensions or like the actual perspective at all. And he had to drop out of the project because I'd wasted too much of his time with my bad description. So instead, I got this beautiful diagram here. You got trees, you got further trees, you got sky, you got like leaves and stuff there in the green part. And then the next guy came back and he did that. He actually had like trees and leaves and it was great. So that was a big lesson there is, yeah, actually draw things down and like if I can't picture it, they're probably not going to be able to picture it either. Another thing was artistic skills don't always translate. My first artist was incredibly talented. He was really skilled. He designed Seth and Yoke, the first 2 characters in the game, who became like my Ken and Ryu. But then I had to go to another artist later because his schedule was filled, he would have classes, and he would drop out for a bit. But I decided to go back to him later for my latest character, Belmont, the villain there. So this was his original design. You see he's like a fireball in a purple suit. He's made of like glowing energy, hype in my game world. And it was great. I love that design. I said, yes, go for it, animate that. And unfortunately, the one thing that was the limit of his abilities seemed to be fire. Because it ended up being like, it's hard to see here, but imagine just like a bubbling cauldron kind of effect. And it looks cool, it looks neat, but it was not what I envisioned. And even he knew that, yeah, this wasn't quite right. Unfortunately, I only saw this after he had finished every frame of the animation, which was also really time consuming there. So I had to go back to my previous artist to animate it, and she did a good job. She yeah, has the actual fire effects going, so that's the actual Belmont currently in the game. But yeah, that was a bummer. So I guess the important thing to realize that like skills for artists or programmers really, they aren't like a linear, measurable thing. Like yeah, you can draw characters incredibly well. It doesn't mean you can handle all these effects and all these things I'm asking for. And it's important to really gauge those skills fairly before someone goes and tries to like wrap up the entire thing. But ultimately, the results were worth it. This was the most recent level here by Sam. Also, I think Sam's here. So, yeah, hey, Sam. He's back there. Wave. Everyone look at him. Aha! That's the power of being up front and pointing at people. But yeah, this is Crash City. It looks great. And this is, yeah, the result of actually drawing a diagram, seeing stuff in progress, and, yeah, having someone who actually showed me the progress. That's nice. Last thing. Getting attention, which I'm not qualified to talk about because I'm not very good at it yet. Well, I try really hard. That counts for something. First up, GIFs. A single GIF of character art or just anything gets me more attention than literally anything else I post. Like any number of still images, one GIF gets way more impressions. It's the reason why I use Twitter for most of the social networking because that's the most efficient means of shooting GIFs at people. Facebook, also alright, but I don't know. Next, going places. There was...
They don't knock Facebook. 10 million Russian bots can't be wrong.
Yeah, you probably get better like bang for your buck if you want to buy followers too on Facebook. I'm not sure the conversion rate between Facebook and Twitter just yet, but yeah. Next, going places. I can't remember if that was Vulkan or Meadows Media Expo, because do you remember what that is? It was Vulkan? Cool. So yeah, that over down there is a MegaCon, a smaller convention down in Jackson. It was pretty cool. That was one of the first places that I went where we actually had a space. I didn't have to share tech support, which was nice. That was a very early version of it, and it was awesome, because that was around the time where I was actually ready to just drop Wave Crash. I was like, well, I built a puzzle game, it plays, it's pretty fun. But then I saw the reaction of players, and that was awesome. Like all day long, for like 8 hours, there were at least like 3 people queued up to play the game at all times. And people got crazy hype into it. And I got hoarse from shouting over things and like being like a carnival barker at people, and it was great. People came back for like multiple sessions throughout the day to challenge their friends, and it was an awesome experience. And the same thing with Humankind and recently GDX. Those have all been great to get feedback on the design and really to reaffirm that like the direction I'm going in is a good one. Sometimes it's easy to forget like what the game's really about when you're working on it every day, and it can be nice to see it through like fresh eyes like that. And the last thing is be hype, at least in my case. I find people reflect your enthusiasm both in person and online, and then you can feed off that, and then we'll feed off that, and it's a never-ending loop of hype. That could be perpetual energy. I don't know what that means. I just heard that phrase in my textbooks, but I think that's what it's about. Lead up to my casual rant. This was the one thing that another awkward drink break real quick. All right. This was the one thing that I was conflicted over including this talk, because I knew for a lot of you this would be the first time you ever meet me, and I don't want the impression to be that I'm the dude who whines because people don't like his game. So I want to preface this with, I understand people don't like it. I totally get if someone doesn't like puzzle games, doesn't like my puzzle game in particular. But this was important for you to show because I've gotten other rejections from festivals and from publishers before. But it's usually more business-like thing. You know, we've gotten 300 submissions, our slate's full. Well, you know, the typical thing you expect. And this was the first result that was really about the core content of my game and the actual base mechanics of it. And that's one thing that hit me kind of personally. I would rather have them said, like, no, this game just won't make any money, or no, this game isn't good, rather than saying, no, this game is a match 3, which we just don't do because they're casual. And the real problem was I underestimated that some people really still do feel games like match 3 games through that lens. They are a casual game meant for casual players. I'm not a casual player because that would mean I'm a bad game. I'm a true gamer, so I do not play it. So I'm going to skip this game. And if, I don't know if you guys can read this, I'll read it. Thanks a lot for reaching out. I think the concept you have is really interesting. Kind of reminds me of the Scott Pilgrim movie where they're fighting with their musical instruments. Unfortunately, match 3 or puzzle games like this are a little too casual for us. And, this was from a smaller publisher. It's one you would be familiar with. You probably have a game in your library or your wish list. And it really has been the biggest obstacle. The one time when I did have a streamer, Swifter, show this game on his chat and on his stream, and the chat was pretty hostile to it due to the basis of it being a puzzle game, when they were more like an FPS crowd or whatever. Yep.
Why are you seeking a publisher?
I was really, originally the scope for the game was much bigger. I toned it down since I am a publisher, but originally I did want to have like a full like campaign sort of mode, which would necessitate like greater responsive character art, like background art and stuff that I wouldn't be able to find on my own. I'm pretty big on, if I do get artists help for something, I do pay them. Like I don't do the rev share favorite thing, and that just would have been outside of my capabilities without a publisher. Plus just the greater amount of attention that you can get through having a publisher backing, like you don't have to go through Greenlight or whatever they had on Steam at the time. You just have a publisher hit them up. It wasn't like an obstacle. It was just something that I really wanted to do if I could potentially get one. I figured I might as well. So, yeah.
I'm sorry if you already mentioned this.
Cool.
How long have you been working on the game?
Oh yeah, I'll talk fast about that. On and off for 3 years now. Usually like on for a few months and get distracted or on other projects and off. And then that was another reason for publisher. I figured if I had some kind of publisher backing, then I'd have a reason for like why I can keep on this, and rather than having to be like a hobby. So I think, yeah, what's up?
Sort of a suggestion of it just does not feel like it has enough of an impact when the puzzle blocks turn into the moving attack of they just ding. You really should work on an effect of them coming up or something like that.
I didn't think about that. The work outside of that. Well, I suppose if I had to move at the same time they were coming up, that could work. But I didn't want any additional delay, as there's always a delay of the attack. And the attack doesn't exist until your attack frame. So like I couldn't like reserve the blocks until your attack frame because then I'd conflict with some other mechanics for the new game. But yeah, that is a possibility. Cool. Yeah. Not that I would change anything within the game. I still made the game I want to make, but I just was surprised that there was that idea. The most common piece of feedback I get is, hey, you should put this on phones, which it could be on phones, but just about any game that doesn't technologically stress the phone could be on a phone. And like even the recently Super Puzzle Fighter 2 is coming to phones, but they're still reworking the mechanics for phones. They're changing the win conditions, so we have a health bar instead of filling up the block, instead of filling up the board, and adding like a gachapon random character buying system, which I'm not doing for this. So it's like, if I put this on a phone and charge $2 for it, no one's going to buy it because people don't buy things on phones. But that was from my experience with my previous game, Knife That Guy. The one weird thing I experienced with that is I had the paid version, which was $1, and the free version later, which was ad supported. And the free version did get more downloads, but it also had a lower review score of like 1.5 stars lower. Like it was 4.6 to like 3. And it's because people, when it's free, they'll download whatever and like, wait, I actually hate these games. And they'll like, to me, it's like you go to a store, you get a sample, and it's like, what is this? Oh, it's pepperoni. Oh, I hate pepperoni. Like, well, okay.
Pepperoni's okay.
Yeah, but like you already
tell you about
no, I hate pepperoni. Well, I'm gonna eat it first, and I'm like, this is gross. But how about you just walk on by? I don't know. How about you read the tags and be like, wait a second, this is an arcade action game on my phone. I don't like those. I like card games. But and that's enough of my rant. Thank you for humoring me. I figured I'm soapbox. I'm gonna use it.
So are you looking for a publisher, or are you planning to just self-publish the game in the end?
Right now, just self-publish. I might do one more round now that the game looks better than it did before. And just like send. Who asked that? Okay, sorry. I might do another round now that the game looks better and see if anyone's interested. But I'm fine just self-publishing now. If I didn't publish it, it would expand what I want to do with the game. Like I said, like some kind of story content or like greater, just things that increase the breadth of the game, but not so much the depth of the game. Next up, other lessons learned. So yeah, like I said, you can't always tell what's fun. I was ready to drop this because I figured I was the one who would like it until I had other people tell me that they liked it too, which was cool. Sport Network helps. This is a photo from our GDX trip. This was the first game that I made as part of a Flyover Games that wasn't made in isolation, which was way better for me too, because it wasn't just like sitting down my computer for like 2 months to point out the game. I could actually like bounce ideas off people and also compete with people. Whenever I see someone making progress in their thing, I want to make more progress in mine. At the GX we went to, Brett Pennings, he's an awesome guy from Grand Rapids making Mage Quit. He won the game of the show, and I was so happy for him, so proud that Michigan dude won it, but I still wanted it more. Like, if they would have chosen me over him, I would have been like, oh, sorry. I was like, yeah, that's what it's about. And the last thing, this may only be a personal thing, since I'm just a studio of one, I have no real investors or like people count on me, but if you're in the same boat, just do what you want. Like take in feedback, understand people's criticisms and take them into account. But ultimately, if you're making your game, it's your game. It exists because you decide to make it exist. And yeah, even if your game is some weirdo match 3 fighting game for casuals. Question time, game time. If anyone has any other questions, ask them now. If anyone wants to play a demo, I can queue that up. If anyone wants to come up front and be judged before the eyes of all these other people here. There's all my contact info. You can find the game. I have a current project built on itch.io. Yeah.
What's the platform? You mentioned Steam? It's PC?
It's on PC, yeah. PC and Mac.
It seems like it'd be a lot more fun with a controller.
Yeah, it is multi-controller. I'm going to be hitting up for a Switch developer account because they're pretty good for indie exposure. At least like every indie game that goes on there. There's like still only like 20 games total on the thing, so you'll find it easy. But yeah, it is made for controller primarily. You can play these games. Yeah, you always have the 2 controllers. You always have to throw down. You also have me on Twitter. That's where I'm most active. I'm kind of active on Facebook, but I'm bad at it because I hate it. Yeah, that's fine. Any questions? Anyone want to play? I'm going to queue it up. If no one wants to play, that's fine. You won't hurt my feelings too bad. I'll be crying behind the building afterwards if you want to.
Hey, Steve, thanks a lot, man.
Oh, yeah.
Before we move on to this, let me just ask, do we have any community announcements? Anybody that's looking for a job? Anybody want to make an announcement about what they need themselves? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm looking for a job. I'm a technical artist and I graduated from Lawrence Tech earlier this year. So yeah, if anybody's looking for one of those, come talk to me.
There are 60 jobs on our job board.
Nope, it's now 100. And we've added, not only do we have an engineering section, but we do have an art, VFX section, business, and I believe Blizzard is looking for someone from VFX.
Blizzard, I've heard of them.
Yeah. So, yeah, check it out. It's the first link on the event page tonight, right under the community section.
Anybody else have anything?
Yeah. Wondering if anyone else would want to join me in making a resume type project. Just not really a huge overarching thing of just really just a small Unity project showing off decorating skills for the purpose of, oh, hey, I can show this to employers. And just, yes, I can work in a group. Yes, I do know Unity. I do know C#. I do know chickens. This sort of thing, and just, yeah.
Do me a favor, not only address this group, but would you post on our discussion board that you're looking for that? Because I want to encourage people to use the site more.
That's the Meetup site?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So when you go to the Meetup site, it now says IGDA Ann Arbor because we got prompts. But it's the same thing, and you will find discussion board. You can start a new discussion. Andrew.
My name is Andrew, and I run a game startup called Gaudium, and we focus on anime-style games on mobile and browser. And right now, we're looking to hire one person for community management, and as well as an illustrator for if you're interested in anime-style CCGs. Thank you.
Is the go ahead. Oh, I was gonna say, is the community meetup board the best place to keep track of things?
Absolutely.
All right, cool.
So yeah, this is a little bit outside the community, but Michigan State just won the Indiecade Audience Choice Award a couple weeks ago.
They also won some kind of football game. I heard something about it.
Damn it, Larry!
Does anyone know Don Rawich? Does that name mean anything? Has anyone heard of the Oregon Trail?
Yes.
Yes. So that's the guy who created the Oregon Trail. So next Wednesday at the University of Michigan, we have a video Q&A, an hour with Don Rawich. So if you have questions for the creator of one of the classic first educational games, you could be there. It's right on the Michigan CSE Facebook page, or you can ask me. Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
I thought he died of dysentery. So
that was low-hanging fruit.
Anybody else? Cool. Let's go on and play some games.
Woo!
Takers?
Oh yeah.
It's pretty cool that you guys are hiring now. Like this is
I mean, I think I'm going to get downloaded this. We're worried about payroll. I'm going to try to make it more education. All right. So this is introduce you. The Scourge of Death Chat. We're not in Death Chat. Did you actually leave?
for like 2 minutes. And I was like, wow, I can't be in here and still talk to these people. I'm out.
It's a lot more tape.
I can't remember. Anyway, so I have this, I make it's full every time, and I swear half the people are different. Like half these people are different. And I have this going on like such.
Oh, brother.
Well, remember time.
That's all you do.
Well, that time I'm
I wouldn't mind that.
I do?
I heard you guys were looking for
I don't know if it's right now, but in general, that is a skill I Jared, talk about that? Instead of opening positions, changes from time to time, projects shift around, but yeah, I definitely in areas we've identified we need more seniors, essentially.
I love you guys' game. I didn't really even realize that I didn't put 2 and 2 together, so I started listening to I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, I'll send you guys a receipt of this my resume. Oh, yeah. It's the one made by those.
Yeah, one of the struggles we have is, working with cutting edge engines on which you can do a lot. Like, we need artists who can prove with, like, you gotta change that small file, you gotta change that CLC, and like, maybe editing changes yourself. This tool kinda works, but you still gotta change your DDS settings on your own, and navigating that space, and it keeps changing.
Is that a slang?
You've made the situation much, much better. It's still challenging.
The manually changing DDS settings, it helps.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's one of the reasons I like.
Lou spent all day Monday. Was it Monday or Tuesday?
Both days.
2 days this week, literally going through like, oh my god, why is this in 64-bit RGBA? It could be, PC6. Why is this 4K? It's on a shoe.
I called it bitch work, and I realized I was probably. It really isn't. It really isn't. It's very.
It has to be done.
It's the one who has to do it. Well, I'm an engineer, so like. Of course I would think that, but
we don't have a production assistant.
We don't. We don't have someone who actually knows fully knows what they're doing with all that stuff. Yeah, and we're creeping closer and closer to AAA too. As we're starting to see more with the stuff.
Jesse has done some amazing things. Some of those.
So guys, like, I remember releasing
again, Derek's a better person than ask.
Oh, you know what? Passion. If you're really passionate about it, I think that obviously we only hire passion.
I would say skills are more important than passion. I work with some very passionate people.
Well, yeah, you still have to get pretty good at it. But like you could obviously if you're a passionate, grow into the position. But yeah, I mean, what else? Keep up with all the latest techniques. I mean, like AAA, it's like it's where we're going. We're not there. We're slowly creeping towards it, but like being that technical and being able to produce something marginally close to AAA caliber.
So for instance, did you play GLSL 3? So in GLSL 3 we had rendered out all the leaders. So really high quality animations, really high quality models, really high quality materials. For Star Control, we're trying to hit roughly that same quality level in real time. Mention about like someone gets hit by once, all the information will go. So how do you guys? Is it like organizing things, or how do you guys do that? I got cards. Somebody else is going to go work together with that for
none of this content is very professional here.
That guy just playing the system. Nobody else could ever look at it. And I'm not an AI guy. And we had people who was really critical us for
I think it's a very good.
We have not been properly but that always has a possibility. Somebody could just get fed up and leave it. Or somebody could get something. Or I think the danger is like somebody hearing good shit in their office. That's the most working scenario.
Right now, like, we're a group of 40, so one person knows all our server content, and the other one has no idea, so it's kind of scary.
Maybe the server guy doesn't know the other side. And also, knowing a little bit about how people really smooth things out. So I know if I do this thing, it's going to ruin Lou's day, because I'm not going to do that. Why don't we just think he's probably going to use Snow and share with him? And we do this on Akio has been a shader. I have some run Photoshop. Like, I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm doing it to help communication, help smooth out processes, help messages. During the production line, and so like the artist side says, you're the programmers, do you guys onboard programmers in the middle of the process? How would that work? Yes. We got to onboard the project. So typically when we do that, the last time we did that, I'll be honest, we have somebody we worked with them on the first couple of tasks, walking through all the systems so that they have some proof. That's so valuable. You have to assume that your new person is the same person upgrading anything that's
physical, HR, benefits. You just cost it down to other people. Typically, wasn't about your
Isn't that how about that? I guess you guys self-publish, so you guys don't need to worry about that. But let's say you're looking for more publisher, right? But you need to scale your team, right? So the publisher gives the money and the deadline, right? But you have to go find the people and train them. So basically, you lose a whole bunch of the time because you're right there.
So, for instance, we got the existing service for I'm not actually paladin for any of that. They were paying good money in it. It took them a month and a half to and that's why I say hiring is really hard. Yeah, because you're picking like people too. Like somebody can say it's really hard for you can pick up the ball and learn. Because I showcase it is a little bit of diving into the deep end.
And like, if a person's not working out, like how long do you guys have to like kind of see what you can do? Or
every single position is a 9-day period. I would say definitely.
That's all right. I like the swap just because that's like
and you gotta once you get hiring people, especially as you get bigger, there are a lot of laws that become involved that you need to be perfectly aware of. You can't just hire somebody. You can't just hire somebody just
it's only a great idea.
if you hire a woman,
I can vouch for this.
You need to at least be aware of the law. If you put out a position that applies for it,
Sorry, I know I'm just distracted.
You can't just
Turn off that. I want to wait for you to stream before I start breaking everything.
You can't just not host